can assure you. But I've basically compared the 3 months figures after our last meeting figures that we had, which is from the 1st of September to the 30th of November 2020. And those are shown in green numbers. Compared those with the almost 3 months after the 30th of November, which is from the 1st of December 20 to 15th of February 21. And those are shown in blue. And where the difference between the previous 3 months and the current 2.5 months, those figures are shown in red. And I've broken them into the different sectors in the Southampton district. And at the bottom there, you'll see the sectors where they cover. So you've got central sector, which is Bargate and Bevis, and central Southampton. The eastern sector will be Woolston, Bitton East, and Sholing. North, it will be Bitton North and Portswood, and west is Shirley, Millbrook, Redbridge, Fremantle, and Coxford. That's how they are recorded in our system. If you look at the figures, the total figures at the end of the day, it shows that reported hate crime have actually come down in the last 2.5 months compared to the previous 3 months. I have to say, I am not entirely confident that we're getting all the incidents reported. I think there's still a lot of unreported crimes out there. And I think COVID, unfortunately, has had an impact because many of our members on the network are working virtually, and therefore the human interaction, the face-to-face, and the more accessible, if I can say that the public have to their support and their guidance is limited. And I think that's why we are actually not seeing as many reported as we did probably the previous 12 months. And by the end of April, I'm hoping at our next meeting, I'll be able to give you full 12 months comparison, the previous and up to the end of March this year, so we can actually see how the figures have moved. What you also got to remember with these figures, as I've mentioned previously in previous meetings, our system will log in the figure once the case has either been closed, i.e. it's been investigated, or there is no other further action to be taken before it goes into the system. So these figures may not be complete because there might be some still in the system. I hope that makes sense. But they will come through between now and end of March as they are closed. But they are not a huge number, I would say. So again, I'm not going to go through all the numbers shown on those figures. I'm sure you're reading it for yourself. If there are any questions you want to raise, ask, please shout, put your hand up. But the only figure that shows an increase in reporting compared to the previous 3 months is the gender identity strand, which, although we're not talking about large numbers, they're still important numbers, and they are up 25% from 8 to 10, which is very, very important at the end of the day. Again, and I'm sure there are others that are not being reported. All the other figures, all the other strands show a drop, and some of them quite considerable drop in numbers.
I feel now that I've presented those stats, it might be useful for me to just touch on where we are with the app. I think there's sort of a feeling that it's been useful in what it offers, but perhaps there aren't as many people as we would like to be probably using it. So yeah, that our long-term plan is kind of to keep the app, make sure the app can keep going for at least the next year in its current format, and then we're going to be looking at what we need to do to change it and whether we need to kind of redevelop it completely so that it's more kind of, shall we say, it deals more with what the support that victims and witnesses of hate crime actually want to receive, and it kind of it helps them to get the support that they need basically, because at the moment it's kind of a case, it connects with the reporting center. You can connect with the reporting centers using the app, but there might be more that people want to be able to get from the app in terms of maybe information about hate crime. But yeah, we're looking at that, and as we think more about that, we'll yeah, we'll have discussions with the network and see what you think as well. But yeah, that's just to sort of kind of explain what's happening with the app and how we're trying to improve it. So hopefully we get more people using it. But yeah, I think that's yeah, that's it for what I wanted to share there. So if anybody, I don't know if anybody has any questions right now, or yeah, perhaps we can.
To item 5 and kind of merge into that. So it's, item 5 is about Andy Lyons already talked about issues around online hate crime, but has anybody got any reports to make on recent experiences that they've learned of around hate crime incidents?
And people start wearing face masks mainly by Chinese people because they got that idea from the mainland China. Got no problem with that. I don't wear it, but a lot of students, they did wear it. They've been picked up by some local youth. I'm talking some is 12 of them, 1, 2, 4 students in the city center. And this group eventually go into the hallway of the student accommodation, not run by the university, but it's a private run property. And they charge everything. It's all on video. And cut the long story short, a detective pick up the job and interview and arrest, release for further inquiry. And you're expecting those things could be resolved very quickly because we got all these known offenders. But as far as I know, the last update from the police is they're still waiting for the decision from the CPS. In fact, I don't think it's a problem of CPS because the officer only submit the report because we said to them, enough is enough. We try to build up a rapport between the community and the police and the authority. And seem to that there's one very simple excuse, COVID, or we don't have enough people. Imagine one detective dealing with 12 offenders, complicate, arguments or different versions and witnesses and victim, one detective. I don't blame him or her, I think it's her. I don't blame her. I think the management need to really look at, and then they said, this is not serious enough. And I used to be a police officer. 8 years ago, I left because I know the strength will go down really, really thin. And I don't think I can cope with. And I give up. But for these officers, she or he may try to do the job properly, but she hasn't got one job. She may have some more other job. But come to the end, we're still waiting. We are still waiting. But because we've been giving a sort of update, CPS is taking consideration now whether it's charge, NFA, caution, whatever. You probably know our culture, the Chinese, is not a militant. We always think about get everyone happy, everyone. We don't want this hate crime happen, to be honest. But when it happened, and I deal with it, I have experience. That's why sometimes people sort of trust me on my police background, but also that give me understanding of how the police work, and then I give the the force a bit of a allowance. But now you don't know, and our chair, as I said, is linking to over 60 other Chinese organization community in the country. Every one of them saying that do you want us to do a petition to the Home Office, to the PM, all this? I said, do I need to go down that route? And I said, how about we give them a definitely 1 year by the end of February. If nothing come back, and then we will decide.
Like for me, hate crime is one of those really they're not you can't always see the effects of a hate crime. That's it, you know. It's like it's not like a burglary where somebody takes something you can't see that little bit of being chipped away from you or your community, your confidence or your self-esteem. When things go completely spectacularly wrong, that's when people say, oh God, we should have done something. So for me, I think, you know, personally, your chair, because I don't think constabularies will change until they're asked to change and to actually report on these victims and to say, well, why is somebody waiting a year? Regardless of COVID, it's not acceptable. And to be fact that you're chasing that person for updates, I mean, you have the victim's code. They should be updating you. So something somewhere's gone wrong. Okay, we can accept, you know, they've got lots of jobs. I understand that, absolutely, but they could do still as a minimum update you to tell you where the job is in the queue, how long it's going to take, what the problems are. You shouldn't have to chase. So you have a lot of my sympathies.
Yeah. Well,
as some of you know, we've been running some training recently with BME communities, and our sessions last week were around safeguarding, but the conversation took us into why people do or do not report things. And there, across the board, there was general lack of awareness, both of the reporting centres, but also what really struck me from the conversation, which kind of just went off completely tangentially, was just people's complete lack of faith in, even if they do report anything happening. And so that absolutely ties in to what you've just been talking about a specific serious situation not being progressed. And it does seem to me that we need to be, as a network, doing something more about, you know, re-promoting the fact that we exist. I mean, this was a group from BME communities across Hampshire. It wasn't just Southampton groups, but none of them knew anything at all about the reporting centres. They were all surprised when I mentioned them. But as I say, the universal reaction was, what was the point? Because nothing gets done. So I think, you know, we've got a big training, you know, in terms of sort of a big public awareness raising campaign that we need to be doing. The other thing I wanted to flag was that I think because we've all been working remotely, actually some of our frontline staff and colleagues are not as tuned in as they were a while ago, and we probably need to think about revisiting some of the frontline staff training around all of this, so that people are alert and listening carefully to what are being told and then advising people. I mean, if Maximilian didn't know that he could report anonymously and they're linked in with the network, you know, how do others know? We've just got to keep reinforcing the awareness and the training around all of this, or we'll never get an accurate picture of what's going on.
And the other thing is that it has been normalized for so long in our communities, because often people also said to me, well, it's really, we should expect this in this country. You know, we should expect it. Well, no, and we should live with it because that's how it is. So we need to take that away from the communities and this lack of knowing reporting centers and all this kind of thing. But the other point I want to really make is a serious link. Yesterday I was at a meeting where there was some mention of suicides high amongst young people. And I wonder how much or how one can make a link between that suicide levels that are rising and this hate crime or hate incidents that might be happening online. Is there any way that links can be made through that? So that, you know, you can actually deal with the issues at grassroots, or it can be domestic abuse as well that can lead people to, which is hate related, which should be linked into hate crime.
Yeah. So basically, what we've got here is kind of the basic idea of a system, and what you can do is it's through a link which I can explain after this meeting about how you can access that, and yeah, and get onto to this page to log the report. But basically, you can put your details in, what organization you're from, your name, and basic things like that, and then also kind of things like what type of the reason for the hate crime, other things about the offence, kind of what it was that they experienced, and also where the hate crime happened as well. So that's the basic information, and then finally what support you've given as well. And but basically we kind of felt if we have a record of that kind of information, as I said before, for any hate crime, because we're keeping it anonymous, we'll get a better idea of kind of where we're dealing with hate crimes, who's being targeted regularly, and also and also things like what type of offences are people experiencing as well. So yeah, all that data will definitely help us, and if we can keep a better record of data that otherwise wouldn't be reported, for example, things that are perhaps being discussed in our organizations, then yeah, this feels like a good system to log it on. And it also, if I show you here, it doesn't show much because we've not had respondents yet. This is only a trial, but we'll be able to get clear graphs, for example, and charts that will, this one, for example, will show us what hate crimes, which strands we're seeing more hate crimes in, and things like that.
So I'm Hayley O'Grady. I'm the inspector for the Southampton High Harm team, but I also have the role of kind of leading the hate crime work that we do within Southampton, and that also means that I try to feed that into our force groups as well, so that across Hampshire we can be a bit more consistent about what we do in terms of our hate crime activity. So I think one thing that will be good, actually, just based on what was said, but was it Joe that spoke earlier, just in relation to like the hate crime and the hate incident aspect? That's something that I've tried to raise quite a lot within the work we do in Hampshire as police officers, because I think sometimes sometimes we maybe put the emphasis on crime over incident, and actually, often it's the incidents that have the bigger impact on victims as opposed to the actual crime. So just to say that that's something that we do try to focus on. And I know today it's kind of down that I'm going to talk about the process taken when hate crime and hate incidents reported. So I guess that leads quite nicely into that, in that ultimately, I think it's fair to say if we have a hate crime or hate incident reported, there is quite a stringent process around that, which involves as soon as that is reported, there will be an initial review done on it by a supervisor, which is usually a sergeant, who will then determine whether it is a crime or whether it is an incident. And I guess the thing to say on that is the way we do that is based purely on law, really. If the incident, if there is a criminal aspect to it and there is something that we can look at, it will be classed as a crime. If there is no actual law, no actual crime per se in law, then we will have to look at it as an incident. However, what we try to do is not change how we focus on that, because the main focus for all of our hate crime or incidents is really the impact on the victim. Obviously, we try to do as much as we can from an investigative point of view, but sometimes, probably more often than not, that can be quite limited. So we have to just try to make sure we keep the individuals updated as much as possible. We also need to take into account how they feel about it and what they want, because I think you know, sometimes in the police service, we can get a bit carried away with the prosecution aspect and what we can achieve because we think that that's what people want. But actually sometimes, and probably hate crime is one of those times when that isn't always the case. So we have to make sure that we're really aware of what the victim's wishes are in that situation. So that then once that review is done, we will then look into what is available for us from an evidential point of view. If there are victims that we can talk to, if there are witnesses that we can talk to, and anything we can gather from an evidence point of view, CCTV, etc. If that is not the case, and we don't have that evidence and we don't have a crime, then we just need to make sure that we are providing the victim with a service that is suitable for them, and that we're able to also signpost to any support services that they may or may not be aware of. And we need to make sure that we have an enhanced service in relation to this as well, because of that significant impact on the victim. And at the end of all of that, regardless of whether it's a crime or an incident, there is a requirement for these to be reviewed by an inspector, by the district inspector. And that is the main reason for that, is to, one, make sure that we have really expedited all this, whatever we can, taken whatever opportunities we can to have a positive outcome in relation to that. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily have to just be the prosecution. That can actually be what we have done for the victim, what we have done for the witnesses. And and I guess sometimes there is also an aspect of I'm quite keen to look at what we can do in terms of learning for any potential perpetrators, because sometimes we all know that sometimes these incidents happen as a lack of understanding, a lack of education or whatever. So we have to look at the opportunities for all people involved to see if we can get some kind of positive outcome.